So I studied a lot for TED. I didn't always have an audience, though, so I had to make my own. This was my TED practice audience. Clearly, I didn't have enough dolls as a child. I preferred playing with my chemistry set. And when I was in high school, I really wanted to be a doctor. So I attended a forum on medical science, and the first seminar that I attended introduced us to surgery, cadavers. And it was the first time I had ever seen a dead body. It was lying right in front of me, covered in a white sheet. And I remember staring at it. And then I saw her hands. She had purple nail polish, and it was chipping like she'd washed too many dishes. And suddenly stories about her life sprang up and filled my head as she became a person with a family who'd lost her life. And I looked at the instructor, and I remember thinking, she's so emotionally detached. And that was when I realized I would never be a doctor. There's a very real aspect of medicine that requires your complete emotional detachment, and I couldn't do that, or maybe I was unwilling, and it's necessary. So instead, I decided to follow those feelings, and I studied humanity through arts, and I began traveling the globe to understand our cultural differences and our emotional differences, and in the process, I found my own humanity. It became clear what I felt that day. I was empathizing with this woman, imagining what it would be like to be her through story. That is the mechanism of empathy. Experiential storytelling, the ability to imagine yourself as someone else, to think the way that they think. And that fascinated me. But even more fascinating, actually no, scary, was what I realized. Empathy was on the decline. But technology, social media, was soaring. So let's go back in time before social media to a time when we were still cooking by fire on wood-burning stoves. And imagine that I can speak to someone who's making a meal, and I say, oh, you're doing it wrong. You keep filling the stove with wood and heating it with fire from the outside in. No, you gotta use a microwave. Heat it from the inside out, the water molecules with radio waves. They would think I was crazy. They might even try to burn me at the stake because they'd think I was a witch. But if I brought out the microwave and I heated their food in 3 minutes, they would think it was magic. And then they'd definitely burn me at the stake. But that's how far we've come, right? Because it's not magic, it's technology. And technology is kind of magical. I mean, we fly. We're not supposed to do that. We landed on the moon in outer space. We read people's dreams. But technology has its limitations. It can't create human emotion, empathy. At least not yet. One thing is certain, though. Technology impacts us. A 2011 survey conducted at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor in the United States found that 3 out of 4 college students is 50% less empathetic today than they were 30 years ago. 50%. With the steepest decline beginning in 2001, around the same time that social media was born. Is that a coincidence? Or is social media killing our empathy? This is Maya. She loves horses and chocolate, as you can see from her profile. In her last post, she said she had a hard day, very hard, ha ha. The responses were that, no, just suck it up with a straw, and someone else showed a bear eating chocolate and said, chocolate's everything. But what we don't see in Maya's profile is that she's actually a 42-year-old man living in her parents' basement wearing a dress right now. That's a joke. She's not actually a man. But some of us believed it, right? We don't trust social media. There's this sort of feeling, we understand and we know that there's a decline in empathy and there's something missing from it. But what? I want you all to come on a ride with me through your imagination right now. I want you to do whatever you need to do, close your eyes or look off into the distance, whatever, to make it more real for you. But I want you to imagine that you're Maya. You're sound asleep in bed. Your eyes flutter open to this odd sound. You look around and you realize, well, your husband's not in bed. You hear the sound again, so you go to the window, and there you see your husband across the way arguing with a group of men trying to ransack your neighbor's home. Then you hear footsteps and a door slam. You're not sure what it is, but then you're scared and, no, nobody's in your house. It's actually your 10-year-old daughter running outside to go see your father, shouting for him. And then suddenly you hear the loud sound of fireworks echo from a man's gun, and both of them are shot, killed in front of your eyes. This is the reality of Maya's life. How does that make you feel? Maya is a refugee from Damascus, Syria. Hopefully we're all feeling something for Maya. And what we're feeling is emotional empathy, spurred by imagination. The depth of our emotional empathy is where we lie on the empathy spectrum. The more affected we are, the more emotionally empathetic we are. It's a survival instinct. Now think, forget about the emotions. You're Maya, you're terrified, alone in your home, when a strange woman approaches you. She promises you safety if you leave Syria with her, tells you to think, to forget about the past and use your head and think clearly about your future. Would you trust her? Would you leave with her? What do you think Maya would be thinking? This is cognitive empathy. It's more cerebral. It allows us to take the perspective of someone else. The better we become at it, the more likely we are to predict or understand someone else's choices. Some of us are better at emotional empathy, some at cognitive. Do you know where you lie on that spectrum? It's okay if you don't, because most people don't, but we should. Luckily, Maya used her cognitive empathy and it saved her life. She was able to take the perspective of this other woman and leave Syria. But what about that post about the hard day? It was the 1-year anniversary of her family's death. Maya laughed off the post, sure. She was embarrassed to be publicly vulnerable. Social media is not built for authenticity. It's built for humble bragging about your skin-bronzing cruise to the Caribbean after your 5-mile run and your vegan meal, right? I'm guilty of it too, because that's what it's built for. But here, we go back to Maya's post after we've gone behind it and gotten to know her a little bit better, and suddenly it takes on a different meaning, and we'd probably offer her some kind words of support. This is compassionate empathy. It's an action, a donation, work with a nonprofit, kind words. Who here would now offer Maya some kind words? Raise your hands. Right? Yeah, almost all of us. Or, I don't know, maybe I'm just raising my hand because other people around me are raising theirs. Social desirability bias is the desire to look good in front of other people. We want to impress them, but we don't wind up actually helping, not unless we're deeply personally moved. Through the story of Maya's experiences, she's become a living, breathing person. She's moved us, and that's powerful. Emotions are more powerful motivators for change than facts. But facts can generate emotions when they're woven into a story that helps us feel through emotional empathy, that lets us take someone else's perspective through cognitive empathy, and that urges us to act through compassionate empathy. This creates friendship, and we're more likely to do something for someone or act or provide support or be inspired if there's an identifiable victim. Maya is an identifiable victim. But now take Maya and turn her into a statistic. There are nearly 7,000 Syrian refugees living in France. Suddenly we disconnect, right? It's not that much, it's just a number. No, if one Maya is too much, then thousands are too much. But it's difficult to process that. It's emotionally overwhelming, so we detach. And the same thing happens with digital information overload. We become statistically numb. The overload freezes our emotions and pulls us away from empathy. And because these platforms are designed as, broadcast systems where everybody's on display, all we're left with is social desirability bias, a desire to look good in front of others. Hence, doctored profiles, memes, selfies, like buttons, and so on. We're being dishonest to be liked, moving away from empathy toward narcissism. A 2011 study conducted at the University of California did in fact prove that, yeah, social media, specifically Facebook, does assist in developing narcissism. But Maya's still out there. She's become one of millions of refugees drawn to other refugees through similarity, another subconscious survival instinct. People in these kinds of groups are so alike, and they know each other so well, that they actually wind up feeling more empathy for each other than they would normally, like the stranger who took Maya in. But just as it's easier for this stranger to feel more empathy toward Maya and the things and the people that she knows and understands, it's also easier for her to shut off to those she doesn't. And without that information, empathy can create a larger rift. It can divide us. One of the things that separates millions of terrorists from millions of Mayas is their ability to shut off their emotional empathy in favor of the religious belief of the group. That's scary. If we're unaware of our emotional ecosystems, where we lie on the empathy spectrum and how to achieve balance, empathy can work in reverse. And we've seen this in spades on social media, right? A shutting down, distance, an empathy gap. It's one of the reasons we feel social media pushing us closer together, yet pulling us further apart. Have you ever noticed that if you're searching online for something, say, I don't know, a camera, suddenly that camera will show up all over your social media feeds? Or if you haven't spoken to or interacted with a friend online for a while, suddenly their presence will disappear from your feed? Have you ever wondered why? It's because social media feeds into this empathy gap. It emphasizes it with algorithms that cater only to the things that we like and isolate us from the things that we don't like or don't know. And then to top it all off, it's built to be habit forming. So we get stuck in loops of bias information overload that never intersect. And the technology that was meant to bring us closer together actually limits our exposure and polarizes us. What a business is built upon is what it perpetuates. And with social media, it's commodification. That's what it is. And we champion these sites at the expense of our emotional well-being because we value the image of success. I think that we are all generally good, and we want connection and to be personal with one another. But how can we if the social media that we're using is isolating us from our own friends? To be fair, it does in a lot of ways help society and us in many other ways, but it needs to be better. We need to reinvent social media to inspire global empathy. Technology isn't killing our empathy, though. We are. We are. And we really need to reinvent it. And we're allowing social media to hand us the loaded gun because, well, we're not being offered any alternatives. There are millions of Mayas in the world, but the moment that we stop seeing them for who they are and we don't see the personal connection or the personal story, how distant does the problem feel? The emotional experience is what storytelling is all about, the imagined experience. There's this really interesting connection between empathy and storytelling and technology. They've been connected since language was conceived. So there's this really interesting dichotomy between empathy and technology, where the link between the two is storytelling. We direly need to take the focus away from our whats, age, race, religion, physical appearance, and focus on our whos, the things that made us who we are, our experiences, our emotional reaction to those experiences. And we do this by getting back to the one thing that gave us the ability to harness our own potential: storytelling. The Maya empathy ride we took was meant to show us that the meaning of an image changes based on the way that it's shown, right? It was meant to take us into our emotional ecosystems to witness this change and our emotional reaction to it through story. And checking in with our emotions sort of does the same thing. Reading and writing about our experiences does the same thing. It helps us to develop emotional and social intelligence. Imagine a platform built with these ideals, with the intention of interconnectedness and curiosity. Social media that incorporates the identifiable victim effect to make digital communication more personal. Profiles don't exist. Liking, commenting, friending, commodification, gone. Instead, our experiences are our profile. Our stories are what represent us. It's the interconnected Google of storytelling, unbiased, colorblind, fair. This is what came of all my studies and my research. I met my amazing business partner here in Paris, and we've created a social media experiment designed to band us all together because we believe that social media needs a push toward authenticity. We're championing a revolutionary shift in social media that steers us toward global empathy. We realize that focusing on technology is not enough. We need to focus on the people behind it. People give technology its meaning. It's just a tool. And the heart of the digital revolution has always been about how technology is affecting us collectively. I had an amazing mentor, an acting coach and a published writer whose name was Anthony Ibsen. And he always said, our job from forever as actors has been to render each other more human by virtue of our own humanity. That's not just true of actors, it's true of everyone. We all need to render each other more human by virtue of our own humanity. Let's check in with our emotions, be aware of our actions and reactions, write down how it affects us. Let's call each other or send personal messages instead of liking or sending emoticons, because we can all shift social media and help everyone become more empathetic through self-awareness. If we can do this, we'll bridge the empathy gap. And if we do that, we'll remember that loving, liking, and friending, they're more than just buttons. Thank you.